33 crew died on a 40-year-old U.S. flag cargo ship that sailed directly into the eye of Hurricane Joaquin. The Voyage data recorder captured every word. We are examining the National Transportation Safety Board Marine Accident Report, MAR 1701. This is the definitive forensic investigation into the sinking of the SS El Faro. All 33 individuals on board were lost at sea. To understand a maritime disaster of this magnitude, we have to rely exclusively on the facts, the engineering timelines, and the surviving data. The National Transportation Safety Board compiled an exhaustive record of the El Faro's final voyage. By analyzing the ship's routing decisions, the mechanical sequence of its engine failure, and the human factors on the bridge, the report establishes exactly how a fully operational cargo vessel was overtaken by a Category 3 hurricane. Section 1. The routing decision. In late September 2015, the El Faro prepared for a routine departure from Jacksonville, Florida, bound for San Juan, Puerto Rico. Before setting sail on September 29th, Captain Davidson conducted a pre-departure risk assessment. Tropical Storm Joaquin was actively developing and forecast to track northwest, then west. But despite the advancing weather system, the captain maintained his intention to follow the ship's normal, straightforward track line, a route spanning roughly 1,200 nautical miles. In an exchange of text messages starting an hour and a half before departure, he noted that he anticipated being 65 nautical miles south of the storm's eye. He was confident that the severe system would remain north of his route and that his vessel, capable of 20 knots, would simply outpace the weather. The NTSB's forensic analysis of this initial routing decision is unequivocal. Citing Section 2.6 on page 245 of the report, the official finding states, the NTSB concludes that the original passage plan's straight-line course at departure from Jacksonville would lead directly into the storm's predicted path. The investigation established that at the time of departure, El Faro had sufficient speed and multiple navigational options to avoid the forecast weather entirely if conditions worsened. For example, navigating through the old Bahama Channel would have added time and distance to the voyage, but it would have structurally sheltered the vessel. Because the storm was still several hundred miles away when they left Jacksonville, the bridge had an ample operational window to alter the route. A critical technical discrepancy existed aboard El Faro regarding how weather data was actually received and interpreted by the crew. The ship relied on two separate data streams. The first was the Bon Voyage system, or BVS. This provided graphic-based weather files that were emailed to the captain's computer at set intervals, displaying visual overlays of the storm's path with wind fields mapped out in red. The second system was the Inmarsat-C safety net, known as SAT-C. This was a text-only system that provided raw, immediate coordinate updates directly from the National Hurricane Center and the National Weather Service. A forensic analysis of the data delivery times dismantles the critical latency that severely impaired the bridge's situational awareness. While the BVS provided visually appealing maps, its data was heavily delayed through the ship's third-party email servers. Section 1.103 on page 52 of the NTSB report states verbatim, "At the times the BVS weather files were emailed to El Faro, the storm location and forecast track in the BVS weather files were not current with the information then available from the National Hurricane Center or through Inmarsat-C safety net. Because of this delivery lag, the BVS files routinely contained atmospheric data that was already 6 hours old by the time it was delivered to the vessel's servers." Compounding this systemic delay was a human delay in actively retrieving those emails. Section 2.5 on page 243 of the report notes a specific instance where a BVS file emailed to the ship at 23:02 on September 30 wasn't downloaded by the master until 0:45 the next morning. The investigation states verbatim, therefore, by the time the captain read that BVS weather file, the information was about 12 hours old. The voyage data recorder captured the resulting confusion on the bridge. At 05:03, the captain noted conflicting weather reports. He stated he had 5 GPS units giving varying positions and that the graphic BVS software was directly contradicting the latest text coordinates. He was completely unaware that he was comparing a 12-hour-old storm graphic against current satellite text data. Section 2. The technical sequence. The routing decisions and weather data latency culminated in a fatal sequence of mechanical failures during the early morning hours of October 1. At 04:46, the ship received an urgent high seas forecast via SAT-C warning of maximum sustained winds of 105 knots, gusting to 130 knots, with seas reaching 36 feet. As El Faro sailed directly into this intensifying hurricane, conditions severely deteriorated. At 05:10, the righting crew supervisor arrived on the bridge and asked for the current wind speed. The chief mate admitted they had no functioning anemometer to measure it. 11 minutes later, at 05:21, the Voyage data recorder's parametric data captured a sustained wind speed of 108 knots. The vessel was taking green water over the bow, experiencing heavy roll, and developing a significant, persistent list to port. That extreme port list initiated a cascading mechanical failure down in the engine room. Section 2.3 on page 238 of the NTSB report breaks down this exact engine failure, stating verbatim, "The port list, coupled with the vessel's motion, most likely caused air to enter the bell mouth of the suction pipe to the lube oil service pump, which resulted in a loss of oil pressure that caused the main engine to shut down." The ship was structurally built to operate with a maximum static list of 15 degrees. Battered by hurricane-force winds and massive sea swells, El Faro had exceeded its operational engineering limits. A static condition analysis conducted by the Coast Guard Marine Safety Center demonstrates exactly how the vapor lock occurred. The simulation was based on the 1,226 gallons of lube oil present in the sump and a 5-foot trim by the stern. It proved that at an 18-degree port list, the bell mouth opening of the suction pipe actually broke the surface of the oil. Air was immediately ingested into the pumps. This triggered the low lube oil pressure switch, which is a vital fail-safe designed to automatically shut off the flow of steam to the main engine to prevent catastrophic mechanical friction. Without steam, the ship's single propeller stopped turning. The vessel's forward speed dropped from over 10 knots to just 0.5 knots. Section 2.3, page 239 of the report, documents the exact moment this critical failure was communicated to the bridge, stating verbatim, "At 06:13, after talking to one of the engineers in the engine room, the captain announced that they had lost the plant. Due to the severe and persistent port list, the engineers were completely unable to restore lube oil pressure. Main propulsion could not be regained under any circumstances." The loss of propulsion transformed El Faro from a navigable cargo ship into a drifting target right in the center of Joaquin's massive wind fields. Section 2.3, page 240 of the NTSB report details this geographical collision, stating verbatim, "From that point, El Faro was dead in the water, with the ship's starboard side nearly perpendicular to the wind, beam 2, and at the mercy of the wind and seas. As the vessel drifted beam to the hurricane, ocean water began sloshing into the engine room through open ventilation ducts, and cargo hold 3 continued to take on water, severely compromising the vessel's buoyancy and physical stability." Despite losing propulsion at 0613 and facing progressive downflooding, the general alarm was not immediately sounded. Section 2.7, page 251 of the NTSB investigation assesses this timeline directly, stating verbatim, "The captain had sufficient information regarding the ship's perilous condition, and sounding the general alarm much earlier, when flooding intensified in Hold 3, would have been prudent." The general alarm was not officially activated until 0727. 2 minutes later, at 0729, the order to abandon ship was finally given. This order came only after the second mate reported containers physically falling into the water, and the captain noted the bow was going down. The final minutes captured by the Voyage data recorder reflect a complete breakdown of any viable survival options. El Faro was equipped with open lifeboats, which were entirely useless in Category 3 hurricane conditions with 36-foot seas. At 0738, the able seaman trapped on the bridge requested a ladder and then a line. The captain informed him they had neither. Concluding the chronological technical sequence of the sinking, the NTSB transcripts on page 270 record the final exchange verbatim. At 073907, the AB said loudly, "I'm gone or I'm a goner." The captain yelled, "No, you're not." The recording ended shortly after as the bridge submerged. Section 3. The Human Factors. The NTSB's forensic root cause analysis extends beyond the mechanical failures to isolate the human elements. The investigation scrutinized the bridge resource management gaps, the corporate culture of the operating company, Tote Services, and the specific risk assessments made by Captain Davidson throughout the voyage. The disaster wasn't simply a consequence of a hurricane, but of hierarchical communication failures that prevented critical navigational corrections in the hours leading up to the loss of propulsion. Bridge resource management protocols dictate that all members of the bridge team must assertively communicate critical safety information regardless of their rank. On El Faro, these protocols failed. Section 2.6 on page 248 of the report contrasts the crew's internal communication with established safety standards, stating verbatim, "Often, the helmsman and junior officers frankly discussed their opinions of the weather situation and the captain's decision-making. The helmsman frequently voiced their concerns to the junior officers, but never in the presence of the captain." Junior officers used deferential hints rather than direct challenges, even as they independently tracked the hurricane's collision course using the text-based SATC updates. This hierarchical deference proved fatal when course corrections were actively proposed but dismissed by the master. At 01:20 on the morning of the sinking, the second mate called the captain to suggest a course change straight south. The captain rejected the proposal, ordering her to maintain the track line plotted the evening before. Section 2.6 on page 249 documents this missed opportunity, stating verbatim, "The captain had chosen not to take advantage of the available escape route through Crooked Island Passage along El Faro's course." By 02:47, the second mate stated to the helmsman that they were pretty much committed now, fully recognizing the narrowing operational window to escape the storm's path. The NTSB traced these individual decisions back to systemic corporate training deficiencies. The officers fundamentally misunderstood the latency of the Bon Voyage system data because they were never properly trained on how the software actually retrieved its updates. Section 2.7 on page 252 addresses this failure directly, stating verbatim, "Thus, the NTSB concludes that the company did not have an effective officer training program for the use of the ship's BVS weather information software. Tote Services provided no formal training on the software's operational capabilities or its critical delivery limitations, which directly precipitated the fatal misinterpretation of the 12-hour-old weather graphics." Section 4. Systemic Findings and Oversight. The investigation's final scope shifted to broader systemic oversight. El Faro was a 40-year-old legacy vessel, heavily grandfathered into older, less stringent structural standards. The NTSB closely scrutinized Tote's safety management system, their adherence to the alternate compliance program, and the effectiveness of U.S. Coast Guard inspections on aging maritime fleets. The findings painted a picture of inadequate shoreside support, a passive corporate safety culture, and a regulatory framework that allowed major structural conversions to occur without forcing vessels to meet modern survival craft and stability standards. Summarizing the complex intersection of structural and operational failures, the NTSB Executive Abstract on page IX lists the ultimate causes. Reading verbatim, the NTSB's accident investigation identified the following safety issues: captain's actions, use of non-current weather information, late decision to muster the crew, ineffective bridge resource management, inadequate company oversight, company's safety management system. The findings also explicitly listed flooding in cargo holds, loss of propulsion, downfloating through ventilation closures, the absolute need for a modern damage control plan, and a lack of appropriate enclosed survival craft capable of actually withstanding severe weather. The sinking of the SS El Faro remains one of the worst maritime disasters in modern U.S. history. The loss of all 33 crew members exposed fatal, overlapping vulnerabilities in weather data distribution, legacy vessel engineering, and human hierarchy on the bridge. The final NTSB report leaves the industry with a definitive structural mandate for reform. In an era of advanced satellite tracking, how will the maritime industry enforce structural safety and bridge resource protocols to prevent legacy vessels from sailing into fatal weather anomalies?